My name's Callum McCaffrey. I'm the joinery manager for Owlsworth IJP. I'm here at the working party. We're going to have a look at a couple of sash windows that have a broken pane of glass in them. I'm going to show you how to assess that and remove the sashes, record them and reglaze them. But we're just taking a second to look at this set of sashes because the ones that we're going to be working on today look a bit more modern, appear to be a later addition to the building. A couple of giveaways to that is that the glazing bars in this window are much more slender. The meeting rail is also a lot more slender than the more modern ones that we're going to look at later. These are the windows in question. As you can see, these glazing bars are much more chunky. The meeting rail is also much larger. There's also a couple of inconsistencies going on with these sashes. They seem to have been packed down from the head. They're not sitting up behind the outside casing, which is also a bit strange and not a great weather detail. So today we're going to look at taking this bottom sash out. We obviously, as you can see, have a broken pane of glass caused by the sash cord snapping and the window dropping when it was open. It's always a decision to be made as to whether you glaze it in situ or take the sash out and do it on a bench. I think it's easier to glaze on a bench, and in this situation it's just the bottom sash, which is a little bit easier. The parting bead here generally has been nailed in and painted in over the years, and to try and remove that to remove the top sash, we might end up having to replace the parting bead. So as it's just a bottom sash, we'll take the staff bead off, cord's already broken, take the sash out, and then once we've done the glazing, we'll show you how to record and re-weight the sash. We've protected the sash, more protected ourselves. We've just put a bit of a cover over that just so that none of that loose glass falls out when we're trying to remove the sash, or we don't risk cutting ourselves on it. Tools wise, really it's just a case of a range of sort of thin scrapers and jimmy bars. I mean, essentially we want to take as much care as we can. What we're going to use to do this is just a range of things just to get some leverage. I mean, we're going to have to try and carefully get some leverage on the staff beads to pop them off. This is a jimmy bar, it's a sort of mini crowbar. This is just a fine scraper, comes in quite handy. It's just really a case of trying to do as little damage as we can. So whenever we're sort of levering off of things, sometimes I put these metal plates on the original timber and then lever off of them. The other tools I have is just a hammer. I've got some nail pulls here. Nail pulls come in handy when it comes to taking the cord off of the sash from the side. When we come to do that, it's a case of just seeing what you can get under them. Usually they're just tacked on, so we just try and lever those tacks out carefully, either with nail pulls or the jimmy bar there. Lever the tacks out carefully, trying not to round the edge of the sash while we do it. So again, protecting those edges is worthwhile. What we're going to do first is just investigate where the pockets are. We need to get to the pockets when it comes to recording the sash, and then we will remove the staff beads. Now on the bottom sash, we only need to remove the two staff beads on the sides. We don't need to take the one off the bottom because the sash will lift up, and we don't need to take the one off the top. If we were taking the top sash out, we would then remove the parting beads once we had the bottom sash out. We're now ready to start taking the staff bead off and just carefully work our way up, trying to pry it off and not damage it. In this situation, because the cord is already broken, theoretically once the staff bead is removed, the bottom sash could fall forwards. So when we get to that point when we're removing the second piece of staff bead, we'll just get somebody to come and lend a hand just to hold the sash in place while we get it off, and then the sash can be lifted out safely. So in order to not make our lives more difficult later when it comes to redecorating, it's quite just having this piece of metal behind the tool when you're starting to pry this staff bead off really helps to make sure we're not rounding this corner here with the pressure. So we're nearly there. Sometimes nails will just stay in the pulley style and find their way through the staff bead. So again, when we're removing these, we're just going to put something behind just to make sure that we don't damage anything. Before we take the sash out, what we want to do is just put a small pencil line that we can rub out later, but just to indicate where the top of that bottom sash is. And what that'll do is it assists us when we're recording it later. We can pull the weight up to the top of the box, just until it's hitting the back of the pulley wheel, and then we can let it back just an inch of tolerance, and then on that cord we can put a bit of tape round the cord where the pencil line is. Then when we go to re-tack the sash cord onto our sash, but we're out here trying to get round the side of it, we just line that tape up with the top of the sash, and then we know we're in the right spot. That's the most useful tip you're getting all day. Sometimes, if there's enough tolerance in the sash and enough space either side, you might get away with just removing one side of the staff bead just to remove the bottom sash by itself. So we're just going to lift it up and twist it out and see. And it looks like we've got enough room. But in a situation where the bottom sash has still got the cord attached and the weights are still attached, what the process would be is that we pull the weights. So we just grab hold of the cord, we pull the weights to the top of the pocket as high as they'll go, and then we either wedge it with the pulley style or just put a small tack through the cord into the pulley style up at the top. And what that does is it allows a bit of slack on the cord for you to get the bottom sash out and sort of get access to the side of it while you just take the tacks out of the side of the sash, and then the sash will come out. And then what you're left with is the weight still in the pocket, the cord still there, and then we just tie a knot in the cord. Once we've detached it from the sash, we tie a knot in it just to make sure it can't drop down and get lost back in the pocket. Sometimes just having a look at the timber species is a bit of a clue as to how old the windows are. There's a few different things you can look at. I mean, generally the side of sashes aren't painted, so it's a nice quick place to look. This looks like Scots pine, which is one of our native conifers. Scots pine has been used extensively for a very long time, so that's probably not the sort of giveaway that maybe a more exotic hardwood or something would tell us in terms of the sort of period of the windows. One of the clues is that this Scots pine is a little bit faster grown than some of the older stuff, so that tells us that it's not maybe as old as the box. I can see when I look at the side of the box that there's what looks like longleaf pine, but a lot slower grown. So they're definitely different periods. Now that we've got the staff bead off on this side and we've got the sash out, our next job is to remove the pocket to gain access to the weight. Now, because the cord is snapped, the weight for that bottom sash is going to be sitting at the bottom of the pocket. This is the pocket here. On this window particularly, the pocket runs underneath the parting bead. It's running over to here. So it's always about problem solving. We don't want to remove the parting bead at this stage. We don't have to. We're not touching the top sash, but because the pocket is behind it, I'm going to have to try and ease it enough to get the pocket out without breaking the parting bead and having to replace that as well. Sometimes this pocket would only be from this edge of the parting bead up to here, this is the inside casing, and that's where your pocket would be. So in that situation, we wouldn't have to go anywhere near the parting bead. We can just remove that pocket. Sometimes they're screwed in, sometimes they're just set in there. Usually with these things, especially when it's been painted so much like this, we'll just try and break that paint first, so that when we actually remove it, we're not pulling a whole load of paint off with it. So I can see the edge of the pocket here, so I'm just going to go around lightly and just with a very thin scraper, just break that joint. So you can see here, just as I'm breaking that joint, a lot of this is just filler that's under the paint. This is why conservation work is always such a mystery until you get into it. But it's a lot of fillers built up here under the paint. Obviously, somebody's been sort of prying this pocket open in the past, not protecting the timber behind it, and we've got a big rounded edge here which has been filled. So we're going to persevere. We'll take the pocket out, but we'll just have to address this later to make sure that as it's on the outside of the window in line with the top sash, we just want to make sure that there's no water ingress possible in there once we're done. So we'll address that a bit later. So as you see, just a big chunk of filler. So carefully. So because I don't want to remove all of this parting bead, but I do need to get above the pocket, and in order to get the pocket out, I'm just very carefully trying to pry it out without it would have been nailed through here. So if we go too quickly or put too much strain on it, it's gonna snap where the nails are. So we just work our way up slowly. So that's the part and bit out far enough. Now we just got to make sure that we can take the pocket. So there's the pocket. So we've taken the pocket out. As you can see, this original pulley style is really tight grained, a really nice piece of pine, in contrast to the pocket that we've just removed, which is not terrible, but a bit faster grown, and you can see definitely not as old. It hasn't darkened down at all really. So this is another clue about these sashes being more modern replacements. Both of the weights are right at the bottom of the pocket. We just need to fish out the weight closest to the inside of the room, which is the weight for the bottom sash. Just while we're here, we can see that the top sash weight is not attached to anything and not taking any load. So it looks like those cords have snapped in the past as well. But for now, one at a time, we're going to fish out the weight for the bottom. I think, given that we're trying to get the bottom sash working and the top sash is just going to stay shut, and we'll install a small block underneath to hold it up there. When this bottom sash goes up, the weight for the bottom sash is going to come down, and as you can see, that weight for the top sash being in there and being loose is just going to give it something to foul on, so we'll take that out. The weights that we've just taken out, I mean, we know that these weights are the correct weight because we can see this window was working before the cord snap. It was working and it was being held in the right position. But just as a sort of clue to how we would ordinarily do it, if we were going to either replace the weights or adjust the weights and they weren't weighted properly, we would weigh the sash with all the glazing and everything, and then that number gets split in half, and you put half of that weight on one side and half on the other. Now, a little tip for making sure that those windows stay in the right position: the bottom sash, the weight wants to pull the bottom sash up if it's too heavy. So with the bottom sash, I tend to keep it a pound either side underweight, so that it makes sure it seats down onto the sill and you don't get a problem with it sort of hovering just above. And then the opposite for the top sash. So the weight wants to pull the sash up, which means if we just add a pound either side for the top sash, it means the little bit extra weight just makes sure it stays right up at the top of the window. The friction in the pulley style and with all the decoration and everything will mean that when you move them, they will just that small addition. It doesn't actually lift it once you position it, but it holds it in that position a bit more securely. The third thing to do is just cut a rough length of the cord. I mean, basically we have to tie the cord to the weight, and then we have to have access to the other end of the cord to pull it back through over the pulley wheel. So I've cut a rough length. I've left a bit on it. We can trim that off afterwards. So the first thing we're going to do is tie one end to the weight. So we've got that tied with a secure knot. Now we need our mouse. So this is what's called a mouse. It's basically a piece of string with a piece of lead on the end as a weight, but that piece of lead is flexible. So we can create a bit of a shape with it that rolls over the pulley wheel nice and easily, and then it'll fall down into the pocket. We then catch the end of the mouse down here in the pocket. We tie this end to the end of our cord, and then pull it all back through, and that basically feeds our cord back through over the pulley wheel and ready to attach to the sash. Around the cord. There you go. So now we're just going to take the weight all the way to the top, And then because we never want it to get that close to the pulley wheel, so we just let it lift back a little bit. And then we're going to put a tack in underneath where the staff bead goes, so that it holds the cord there, so we don't have to worry about holding the weight up. That's the weight in the right position, while the sash is at the bottom in its closed position. There's a mark for the top of the sash when it's in its closed position. So if we pull the cord tight and put a bit of tape on there where that mark is, that gives us a position for the top of the sash. So in these windows the original cords were jute, but as obviously it failed, just to give it a bit more strength the next time round, we're using a wax cotton cord for this one. So now that we've got the weights back in there, the cord is attached and the weight is up at the top, we're going to put the pocket back in before we pin the parting bead back in. Nice and easy. So we're now just going to pin the parting bead back in. So we're just lining the bottom of the tape up that we put on earlier. Line that up with the top of the sash, as we said earlier. We marked it on the style. So we're now just using some clout nails with a nice wide head to physically fix the sash cord onto the sash. Okay, I'm gonna go in behind that staff bead and then drop it down into place. So we're now just going to fix the staff bead back in, allowing a little bit of clearance, maybe a couple of mil, just for to let the sash run. We've got an old paint line, so we know where it was. We know it was working well before. Once you get to the higher fixings for the staff bead, it's good practice just to push the sash up to make sure it's not binding anywhere. And we're done. So there we have it. We have a working sash. Stays where it should, and later on, once the putty's cured, we'll come back, decorate the putty and touch up any bits that might have flaked off while we were removing pieces.